Roll tape.
Rolling.
Truth's Carnival, Stolen Secrets. Exterior pathway in front of the haunted house, early evening, September 28th, 2012. Customers are walking up and down the midway of the carnival. People are playing games, eating carnival food, laughing, kids are crying, screaming, and having fun on the rides. Matthew Benjamin can be seen in the distance wearing a carnival barker's outfit, yelling over the crowd to get their attention. There's a young man handing out flyers to everyone he comes in contact with. Elizabeth is walking back to her tent through the carnival crowd. She's wearing a white button-down blouse with her sleeves rolled up and tight-fitting dress jeans. She passes the haunted mansion and sees Lorelei waving to come over to her.
Liz, come here quick.
Elizabeth walks over toward Lorelei's ticket podium.
Hi, Lorelei. Excited much? I have to show you this.
Lorelei pulls out a raggedy old book that looks like it is a face carved into the cover.
I found it a few days ago for a new Halloween prop. Here, check it out.
Lorelei hands the book to Elizabeth. It looks similar to one of her fortune books. She rubs her fingers down the spine and turns it over. Lorelei steps on a button at the bottom of her ticket podium. The book swings open, blows some air to turn the pages, and howls like it's possessed. Elizabeth jumps and gives out a shriek.
Where'd you find this? A Joe shop in town.
Elizabeth picks up the book and hands it to Lorelei.
You're lucky I like you.
Elizabeth gives a smile and walks toward her tent. She glances back to see Lorelei scaring some of the kids with her new prop. She continues toward her tent with a smile on her face and shakes her head. Interior, Elizabeth's fortune tent, early evening, same day. Elizabeth walks into her tent. There's a fake hardwood floor down to level the ground out. Her shoes clack as she walks toward the round table in the middle of the tent. There's a storm candle in the middle of the table. It has a protective glass around the candlestick. There's a small book of matches next to the candle holder. A deck of tarot cards lays untouched near her seat. There's an old wooden chest near her seat. She walks around the table to sit and sits on the opposite side. She pulls out her chair and sits down, folds her arms and scans the tent again. The tent is dark from the lack of daylight coming through the doorway and makeshift windows on either side. Grabbing the matches, Elizabeth lights the candle in the middle of the table.
I don't bite.
A young woman in her early 20s comes walking out from the shadows of the tent. Her hair is matted, but in a ponytail. She's wearing a tan-fitted t-shirt and jeans with holes in the knees. She nervously walks over to the table and sits down. The light from the candle lights her facial features. Elizabeth looks into the girl's eyes and blows out the match.
You shouldn't be here, Mackenzie.
The girl looks up at Elizabeth with a shocked look on her face.
How did you know my name?
Elizabeth sits back in her chair, places her arms on the armrest like a queen sitting on her throne, and smiles at her. She leans forward, grabs the deck of tarot cards, and shuffles them.
Where are you from? Close by.
Elizabeth puts the deck and cuts it.
Why are you here by yourself? I saw the lights. I thought they were pretty.
Elizabeth slowly flips over the card from the top of the deck onto the table. The card is revealed as creativity.
This is you. You're always on the go and busy, but that's not a bad thing.
Mackenzie looks on intently, and Elizabeth continues to flip over the cards in the form of a cross in order of sorrow reversed.
There are many people who love you who are sad, but that has faded. They're still sad, but it doesn't hurt as much.
Elizabeth flips over the outsider and places it on the table.
Why are you so isolated? What do you mean?
Elizabeth looks up at Mackenzie, then flips over the nothingness card.
What don't you know? Yeah.
Mackenzie stares intently. Elizabeth flips over the breakthrough reversed and places it next to the nothingness card.
He's looking for you? Who?
Elizabeth looks down at the card.
Someone who loves you.
Elizabeth flips over the completion card sideways over the nothingness card.
He'll shed light on the nothingness. He'll help you find out what you don't know.
Elizabeth looks up from the cards and Mackenzie is gone. A gust of wind blows through the tent and blows out the candle. Elizabeth gets up, walks outside her tent, and looks in every direction for Mackenzie. She walks back inside to the wooden chest. She flips open the iron latches and lifts the lid. She reaches in and grabs one of two books. She stands and walks over to the table. She places the book down and opens it. She flips through the pages and fade to black. Interior, Matthew Benjamin's trailer, evening, later that night. Matthew is on top of Elizabeth looking down at her blue eyes. There's nothing but a sheet covering them. Elizabeth looks into his eyes. They both are catching their breath from the sexual pleasure they both endure. "I ever told you how beautiful you look?" She slowly closes her eyes and smiles at him.
On many occasions.
Matthew moves off Elizabeth. He lays next to her. She opens her eyes and stares up at the ceiling in thought. Something wrong? You don't seem to be yourself.
Yes, I'm fine. Just have some stuff on my mind.
So you're thinking of someone else. Elizabeth grabs a pillow and smacks him playfully. Matthew laughs at the playfulness. Elizabeth takes the pillow, wraps her arms around it, and looks back up at the ceiling. There's something wrong?
I don't know. A girl came to see me today
And you didn't get paid?
No, it's not like that at all. I don't know how to explain it.
Was she in the book?
Not the way I would expect.
She turns over to her side and looks at Matthew. Matthew brushes some of her hair away from the front of her face.
I'm sure it's nothing. I just have a feeling about this girl.
He brushes his fingers down her cheek. She closes her eyes for a moment and then opens them. Is there anything I can do to help? Elizabeth looks into his eyes. She kisses him passionately on the lips. In their embrace, they both roll over so Elizabeth is on top of Matthew. They continue to kiss. Fade to black. Ew.
Booty call.
It's more than that.
We got it.
All right.
Okay. Exterior outside Matthew's trailer later that evening, early morning. Elizabeth walks down the trailer steps and makes her way toward her trailer. The only lights on in the Carnival are the lights coming from the outside of other trailers. She finishes buttoning her shirt. She sees a figure walking inside the Carnival gates.
Hey, you shouldn't be here.
The figure dashes between a few trailers. Elizabeth turns toward Matthew's trailer and watches the lights go on. She turns toward the other trailers and makes her way to the other side where the main attractions of the Carnival are. Matthew can be seen looking out his window. He sees Elizabeth run toward the trailers.
Come back.
She chases the figure into the midway. Slightly out of breath, she scans the different booths. She slows her pace down and cautiously makes her way toward the tent. The mysterious figure can no longer be seen. She strains her eyes to see in the darkness. A loud crash is heard coming from inside her tent.
No.
Elizabeth's fortune tent, late evening, same night. She bursts through her tent doorway and sees a young man going through her wooden chest. One of the chairs near the table is knocked over and the glass from the table is shattered on the floor.
You're not a thief, are you, Michael?
The young man is startled and looks at her with confusion.
How do you know my name?
Now that is a good question.
Elizabeth walks over and picks up the chair that was knocked over on the floor.
I know that you're here for a reason after hours. Why don't you tell me what you're doing in my tent?
Michael hangs his head in shame.
I don't know.
Elizabeth looks on as he struggles with his words.
I was looking for you.
Elizabeth walks over to the other side of the tent, picks up a dustpan and a brush near a trash can, and walks over to clean up her broken candle cover. She sweeps the glass up and moves to the garbage and dumps the tray in the can. She turns and looks at Michael.
I heard you tell fortunes.
Elizabeth walks over and sits in her chair. She lights the candle on the table, then grabs the deck of tarot cards and begins to shuffle them. Michael hesitantly watches from her wooden chest and slowly makes his way over to the empty chair.
Can you really tell fortunes?
Elizabeth smiles at him and spreads the deck in her hands.
Pick a card. That represents you.
Michael picks a card from the deck, and Elizabeth places the deck down. It is the breakthrough card. He puts it on the table.
I want you to think of a question.
Michael stares at the top of the tent for a moment in silence.
This represents your question.
Elizabeth places the creativity card on the table. She looks at Michael like she's putting a puzzle together.
You're looking for someone very important to you.
Yes.
Elizabeth flips over the sorrow card.
This is someone for whom you've grieved.
Michael looks on intently. Elizabeth flips over the nothingness reversed card and places it in the center.
You are the light in the darkness.
What do you mean by that?
Elizabeth smiles at him. She then flips over the aloneness reversed card on the right.
This is who you search for, and you shed the light so she is no longer alone.
Matthew comes bursting into the tent in a fit of rage. He sees Michael sitting in the chair across from her. "What is going on here? Who are you and why are you on my carnival grounds after hours?
Matthew, this is Michael. He needs my help.
This better be good. Michael pulls out a flyer from his jacket pocket. He hands it over to Matthew. What's this?
I've been passing these out all day, every day since your carnival came to town.
Elizabeth stares at Michael. Matthew reads the flyer to himself. Oh yeah, I've seen these all over the place.
You're looking for your twin sister. That's why you came to see me.
She came here 2 years ago and said you told her when her 15 minutes of fame would be. She was so excited she thought she was going to be a famous movie star or something, but she went missing last year. We need to know where she is.
Didn't you say that you saw...
What is it that you want, Michael?
I just want to know what happened to her.
I can't tell you that.
Elizabeth turns and lifts the lid of the chest, grabs the books and places them on the table. How do you know she wants to be found? Michael stands up and walks over to Elizabeth.
I just know.
I can tell you about you.
I don't want to know about me.
You're being picky?
If I wanted to know about me, I would have asked.
Elizabeth looks on patiently.
I can't tell you about her.
Michael slams his fist down on the table with rage.
I need to know now.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Matthew walks around to stand behind Elizabeth, ready to attack if needed.
Why don't you sit down?
Michael turns around and grabs the top of his head with his hands in anger. He abruptly turns back and looks at the books on the table. He looks over at Elizabeth and Matthew standing behind her. Michael then rushes over to the table, grabs one of the books and the candle off the table. He holds the book over the flame. Elizabeth calmly watches the events unfold. Put the candle down.
No. I need to know.
Michael blows out the candle, leaving the tent in darkness. He rushes out the door. Ah, shit. Matthew gives chase and his footsteps can be heard fading in the distance. Elizabeth lights a match and lights the candle. She calmly places it on the table near the tarot cards and one of her books. She sits down and flips over the top card on her deck. She places the completion card on top of the nothingness reverse card. Fade to black. Blah.
You can move back with this, right?
Yeah, can we?
Yeah, you guys can move back.
People are going to wonder how we suddenly managed to move over here.
Magic of Hollywood.
Constantly. Rolling. Action.
Exterior forest outside the carnival grounds. Michael is running into the woods toward the marshlands near the carnival. He hides behind a thick tree trunk to catch his breath. He slouches down to the ground, resting his head on the trunk of the tree. He opens the book he stole from Elizabeth and begins to scan through the pages. He becomes frustrated when he sees the pages are blank and throws the book. The book bounces a few times before it stops against a hollow tree near the water. Michael strains his eyes in the dark to see what is ahead of him. He stands and walks over to the water. Not far from the shore, he sees something protruding from the water.
What is that?
Elizabeth appears from behind a tree and places her hand on Michael's shoulder, scaring him.
I tried to see what happened, but nothing was there.
All is forgiven.
Matthew appears a few yards away and shines his light on Michael. He sees Elizabeth standing next to him in the light. He walks over to them. How did you get here so fast? Elizabeth takes Matthew's hand with the flashlight and shines it toward the water, revealing the top of a crate. Elizabeth and Matthew look at each other. Police sirens can be heard in the distance and fade out. Fade to black. Fade in marshland outside the carnival grounds 30 minutes later. Police officers and crime units are lifting a crate with a white, shouldn't even be a white too, but lifting the crate out of the water. Matthew is standing next to Michael watching the process. Elizabeth turns to the hollowed out tree and sees Mackenzie looking down at the book. Elizabeth walks over to her.
That's you in that crate, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How did this happen?
I don't remember. How come we're the only one that can see me right now?
Let's just say that I'm in tune to these kind of things.
Does this book say what happened to me?
Yes. However, it also says what is going to happen to your brother.
Can I see?
Something tells me that you already know.
Matthew and Michael are standing off to the side, watching the police divers and other crew members lifting the crate from the water. Matthew puts his hand on Michael's shoulder. You're probably not going to want to be here if that crate contains your sister.
I know. But I need to know if she really is gone.
The police sergeant walks over to the two men watching.
If there is a body inside this crate we're hauling out of the water, we may need you to identify the body, especially if it is your sister.
Yes, Sulu.
I understand.
Are your parents around?
No,
Make it stick.
they're watching for me.
You should really call them just in case.
I can't. I need to make sure this is really her first.
Matthew turns to see Elizabeth pick up her book from the hollow tree. Matthew and the police officer continue to talk while Michael looks on. Elizabeth opens the book to Michael's 15 Minutes of Fame. She sees a newspaper clipping appear on the pages and shows it to Mackenzie.
Mother of missing twin finds his sister's body 1 year later. How come I can't remember any of this?
Elizabeth closes the book and wraps her arms around it.
There's a reason for everything.
I'm trying to remember.
Flashback. Mackenzie's accident/murder, September 28, 2011. Mackenzie is out with her friends at a bar, laughing, drinking, and having a great time. There's a young man sitting next to her. He slips a pill into her drink when she isn't looking. Flash 2. Mackenzie is escorted out of the bar and placed into the front seat of a car. Her eyes are barely open. Flash 2. The man loses control of the car and crashes just outside the marshlands. Mackenzie is bleeding from her head. Her body sits motionless. He drags her body through the forest to the water. Flash 2. The man stuffing Mackenzie into a plastic bag and then throws her into the crate. The man runs into the forest. Flashback to present. Mackenzie looks at her brother.
He never gave up on me.
No, he didn't, and he never will. You're a part of him no matter what.
Elizabeth turns toward the police officers. The crate has been excavated out of the water. They open the crate up and Mackenzie's body is wrapped inside a perfectly sealed clear plastic bag. Mackenzie walks over to her brother. He has tears running down his face. She kisses her brother on the right cheek and whispers in his ear.
Thank you, Maggie.
Michael puts his hand up on his cheek. He looks to his right and sees Mackenzie disappear. Elizabeth watches as Mackenzie disappears like a cloud of smoke. Matthew turns and sees Elizabeth. She smiles at him and he nods in return. Elizabeth then turns around and starts making her way back to the carnival alone. Fade out.